Welcome everyone to today's edition of Frontier Opening Bell. I am Bosin Omofaye, and it's the 29th day of September. We're heading towards the final hours of the month. Very eventful so far, not the least from the raft of central bank actions across the continent, the debt issue around Zambia, and of course, COVID-19, various lockdown easing, and a bit of a pullback in some of the conditions relating to the coronavirus. So let me welcome Ali Kansachu, who is the CEO and founder at Rich Frontiers Management, to the show. Good morning, Ali. It's good to see you in Nairobi.
Morning. Pleasure to be with you, Bosin, as always.
Thank you. We appreciate your time and coming through on the program all the time. We'll get one or two more participants to join us on the show this morning. Agnes Gital, who is a partner at GBS Africa and at Frontier Africa Reports, is joining us. Good morning, Agnes.
Good morning. I'm just here to listen in, just
Thank you very
giving
much.
Ali, my fellow East African, some moral support. But I'm glad to be here.
I love the East African community pact. I love that. The community is very strong. I love that regional integration. Chima Ukadike from Vertiva Capital Management, she's joining us from Lagos, Nigeria. Good morning, Chima.
Good morning, Bosin. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. It's good to see you. The South African stock market gave a very big jump on Monday, the first trading day of the week, as we step into the end of the month, 2.11%. On the flip side of that was Nigeria's stock market, also up very strong, but by a smaller 0.75%, but holding the 26,000 territory, very strongly led by the banks in terms of volume. But in terms of gains, a bit of a mix between the industrial, consumer goods, and MTN, the telco giant. The Ivorian market was down 0.61%, and the Kenyan market 0.2%. Kenya today is where we're looking at the interest rate decision by the Monetary Policy Committee. Yesterday, the Ghana Central Bank decided to leave interest rate unchanged at 14.5%. What else is making headlines within within the East African space? Yes, Kenya's remittances moved up nearly 30 billion shillings within the month of August. That's just a backward-looking data, but of course gives us a sense of how Kenyans are putting money back at home. The tea auction by Kenya, there's a drop in prices to $1.89 per kilo. I guess that perhaps there's an overproduction of tea. If you have an excess there, Ali, I wouldn't mind an extra cup of tea. If you have tea prices, it's down a little bit. Ali, good morning.
Morning.
Yes.
Yes, maybe I'll start with the remittances story. This has really been a standout area. A lot of people, including the IMF and the World Bank, were predicting a sharp slide in remittances, not only in Kenya, but across the continent and in emerging and frontier economies. And what's been extraordinary is really how resilient remittances have been, not only into Kenya, but into other emerging market jurisdictions. This has been really quite a stellar performance. And again, we're seeing it hold up very well. With the rates of unemployment in the West and in the source markets, it speaks to the intellectual capital in Kenya, which has been exported abroad, that they're able to hold on to their jobs in what is a very, very tough environment. So I think this has been a key pillar of support for the shilling. There's been a lot of debate about the shilling, with the Americans stepping into the debate on Business Daily. There was a report this morning about the Americans talking about the shilling, but the shilling has been able to maintain its value because of inward remittances, which have outperformed all expectations. That's a fact. With respect to tea prices, what's interesting, Bosin, was I saw a report in the Wall Street Journal which was talking about tea prices rising internationally, but here in Kenya we've had very soft prices. And I'm still not sure why there is this discrepancy, and might be something to do with logistics. and the fact that a lot of our buyers are places like Pakistan, Iran, which has had this currency turmoil and therefore has had lots of issues around buying. So it might be a specific issue, and we'll have to look into it more deeply. But essentially what the Wall Street Journal was saying was that more people are at home, they're drinking more tea and coffee, and therefore, you know, the weakness in the price, I hope, will resolve to the upside over the next few weeks, but we'll have to see how that develops.
Thank you so much. Let me quickly welcome Akintunde Suleiman from Greenwich to the show this morning. Akintunde, good morning.
Morning, Wilson. Thank you very much.
It's good to have you, one of the analysts there from that investment financial services firm based there in Lagos. Agnes, a quick one. Are you having more extra tea, or you sending more money back home to Nairobi or the Kumuru County area of
I'm doing both of those, Boston, sending more money to support our economies, at the same time drinking more tea. I'm hoping my consumption of tea reflects on my dad's farm, that he gets more money for his tea. But certainly interesting to see diaspora remittance maintaining an upward trend and obviously propping the shilling. Again, as Ali stated, we had a conversation where there was doom. The World Bank released a report predicting that the remittance across sub-Saharan Africa would decline, obviously because of the challenges induced by COVID. But we've seen the resilience of the African diaspora, perhaps some tapping into their savings to support their people back at home. And remember, this money is sent for domestic purposes, to pay school fees. There are no schools at the moment, so I'm not too sure, but also to sustain their families back home, buying food, and also some part investing in businesses. But also this week, the Capital Markets Authority gave a license to African diaspora asset managers, our first in Kenya, and they are looking to tap into diaspora savings and remittance and perhaps channel that into sustainable investment project. We've talked about all this money coming into a region. How can we channel these funds towards projects or to finance some of the projects that African governments are constantly looking funds for? But it is great to see that Africans in the diaspora have continued to support our motherland despite the challenges. I do hope the Nigerians are doing the same.
Well, I'm going to ask those who are in the financial services industry, they track the money in between Chima and Akintunde Suleiman about that. Akintunde, what is the story around the Nigerian? Well, we'll talk about Nigeria's remittances. Let's just go through very quickly the news that Sterling Bank, one of Nigeria's tier 2 banks, is getting approval to become a holding company, will spin off its non-interest banking unit into an autonomous entity moving forward. There's no deadline given into that. Sterling becomes the second bank within the last few months to make a similar move. GT Bank makes similar announcement, looking to conclude its own restructuring within the first quarter of next year. Analysts are still appraising President Buhari's new petroleum industry bill. What is in it? Would there be a scrapping of the NNPC or an unbundling and registration of a new entity that will carry on within the new program for the oil and gas sector reform? That's the story still out there. And earlier we mentioned about the Kenyan MPC keeping rates unchanged at 14.5%. Let me touch very quickly with Akintunde here on the story around the Nigerian market space. Where did we finish off yesterday? What's your take?
So thank you. The market closed positively yesterday across the equities market, and we saw treasury bills average yield decline, or score rather. And this shows some bit of sell-off across the market, because we see the adjustment in MPR having a bit of impact across short-term bills, and we are seeing the bond market as well react to this. And the story across Sterling Bank, we've seen lately that a lot of banks have been trying to change their structure to a holding co. And for Sterling Bank, it's just the second bank, like you mentioned earlier on. This will help their capability in terms of cross-selling of their businesses across their businesses. Likewise, it will help them in terms of cost effectiveness, because we're going to see some sort of cost sharing across the board, and this will, at the long run, lead to positivity in terms of return to equity for shareholders. So it's a positive development for Sterling Bank, and we can a vivid example is just Stanbic. You see the structure Stanbic is running. GT is trying to look into that space as well, holding the same structure. And for Sterling Bank, it's going to be good. And for their non-interest being a single entity, it shows that the non-interest banking division is going to have, so it's an opportunity banks need to start exploring, because there are a lot of funding gap in the non-interest banking space in Nigeria.
Who knows, perhaps they're trying to turn the non-interest unit into an entity on its own, like Jaiz Bank. Perhaps that's where they're going to compete in that and have it within that holding structure. Perhaps at the end of the day, they will end up having two commercial banks under the same roof. It looks like a very clever move, by the way. But we're watching very closely when Sterling Bank continue to inform the market and unfold what they have on this program. Chima Okadike, let's check in with you with the consumer goods space. What's the latest news we're having here from some of the big names such as flour mills?
We're seeing very positive news across the consumer goods sector. Two favorites that have been saying for a while now are remain flour mills and NB. NB has been one of investors' favorites, and we've seen that this stock has gained about, if I'm not mistaken, about almost 50 or thereabouts percent. I'm not very certain of the figure, but the change has been very significant, going from about 30 naira to, last I checked, was about 49 naira 50 kobo, even after touching about 52 naira 50 kobo. So given the economic environment that has affected the brewery sector, I think that this is a very positive development for NB, and more so given that we're not seeing the same excitement concerning other brewery players, that's Guinness and international breweries. One must just wonder what it is that's going on for NB. As it is, there's no real news that we can say has been spurring this positive investors sentiment. We can only say that maybe as a fallout of the company's increased buyback of its shares, investors are beginning to see that, to think that maybe there's something here, maybe the company is set to do a lot better. Also, the fact that we expect Q3 to be a positive quarter, and going forward into Q4, we expect it to be a positive quarter for the brewers, given that we'll be expecting a more active drinking population. Clubs are open, bars are open, and drinking areas are now open. I think that investors are really very positive about the stock.
Thank you. Ali, we understand that the President Kenyatta yesterday reviewed the curfew period in Kenya, and does that give guys more night timeout? Agnes, you don't need to listen to this.
The President tweaked the curfew, and the curfew now runs from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. More importantly, for the nighttime economy and for the entertainment economy, which is such a big part of Kenya's economy and many other parts of the world. I was in the UK. They are grumbling as well with some of the rules that have come into play. In fact, Boris seems to be following President Kenyatta in that respect. But essentially, the curfew now runs from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. Restaurants and bars obviously can sell drink, which was something that they were unable to do. This was being celebrated on social media to a great degree yesterday. I think everybody has felt very cooped up. They're all excited. We're big Premier League fans, so you can imagine people want to be watching it in groups with their friends. The issue with the schools, a lot of people were hoping that he would give some respite or a date for the school restart, but that did not come through. Look, we all know that children, even if they're infected, are not suffering like adults. It's practically a granular thing as you go up the age curve. But the concern is if kids come back to school, get infected, and then they take it back into their households, is what I think the concern and worry is. So schools remained closed for now, but definitely overall a relaxation. It has been, for me, incremental, well calibrated. But I think the entertainment economy will be very happy to get some respite, because really they've been under the cosh, I'm afraid, and have suffered greatly in this COVID economy.
Actually, today, how soon will you be going to the cinemas? It's been reopened in Nigeria as well. It's all over the news. You missed the popcorn?
I don't think I'll be going anytime soon, to be very candid. I don't think I'll be going anytime soon. And regardless of the fact that we're having a large reduction in our cases, I'm still very skeptical. Because the huge population of Nigerians that did not oblige to those health precautions. We go about the streets as at 2-3 months ago. A lot of people weren't wearing their masks anymore. So I think it's still a time to be cautious. I don't think we should just.
I agree with you.
Yeah, we should just go into it.
It's time to be cautious. The level at which folks go about these days with their wearing masks, you see them in Lagos and elsewhere, it's amazing how folks just mix around, throwing caution to the wind. And I think that's a very great issue. One key issue the Nigerian authorities need to think about. Let's talk about South African marketplace, but one big story around East Africa and Southern Africa relates to Angola, which is Zambia, which is debt. Angola Intercontinental Hotel won't be opening until the end of the year. We hope that will happen. Sofitel is also there. The country's National Oil Corporation, Sonangol, is heavily invested in the Intercontinental 5-star hotel. But looking at the top of the list, we have South Africa's PPI, 5 months high, 2.4% in August. South African Airways is going to be rescued, but the Treasury wants very strict conditions for that 10.5 billion rand money that is going out. Then at the middle there is a story for every part of the continent, perhaps with the exception of few countries like Egypt. More than a third of African states are in debt distress or heading into distress. That's according to the IMF. Let me take that straight to Agnes.
Thank you, Boston. The debt narrative on African countries is something we have discussed here and on other various platforms. I think it's worrying and not political. I think it's about time we discussed and held our government accountable, making sure that the money that they borrow, obviously governments must borrow to finance projects, but the most important thing is, where does that money go? Can they account for these funds? The biggest challenge for most of us in sub-Saharan African countries is servicing this debt. And of course, it means that critical sectors like healthcare, education are neglected when our governments have to service this very expensive debt. Again, I bring the topic of how can we find alternative sources of affordable financing, and we've discussed the role of diaspora remittance and diaspora saving. How can we be innovative and perhaps attract this fund to finance projects for African? We think that's sustainable. So countries like Kenya, of course, Burundi, Chad, are countries that have really been marked as countries with highest debts. But it's a continued conversation, and when you speak to African politicians, they compare themselves with the beggar boy economies and say everybody's in debt. Everybody, particularly now during COVID-19, everybody has borrowed because there was no alternative. But it's, what do we do with the money that we borrow? So a continued conversation. I think it's important that it's in this, we carry on this conversation, challenging our governments to be careful and prudent in the way we finance our projects.
Thank you. What about Angola's Intercontinental Hotel?
So the hospitality industry, as Ali alluded to, and tourism industries, of course, with borders closed, has suffered tremendously. Occupancy rates in Angola declined from 60% early April to about 7%. Suddenly, no hotel will open and operate under such environment. So hopefully, it will open next year. That's what they say. But also remember, the investors are mostly government, with the oil prices being very low. I'm not too sure whether the opening would remain on schedule, but it just shows you the distress in the hospitality and tourism industry. I talk about sustainability. How are we? We have constantly depended on international tourism. How do we grow domestic tourism, regional tourism, so that when international borders are closed or affected, that this industry can continue to operate? So again, the pushing back the opening date is certainly because of the challenges induced by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Chima, yesterday the Ghana Central Bank talked about the country's tourism hotel industry down by 98%. That was a massive, nearly 100% decline there. Chima, so when you look at the hotel and tourism in Nigeria, this is seriously correlated with the consumer goods space.
We have seen a significant decline relating to participants or players in the tourism sector. Just how many weeks ago, I think last week or so, we got news from Transcorp that they were going to be letting about 40% of their staff go, and they're going to be having to take pay cuts. So I think it is something that will see affect a lot of these businesses across that sector. Now, filtering that out into the consumer goods sector, that sector is one sector that kind of has a very strong demand for consumer goods products. We go to the hotels, they serve food, they have disposable towels, they have drinks and all that. You talk about the cinemas, they have popcorn, like you mentioned, they have drinks, they have food and packaged food and whatnot. So I think that with the decline we're seeing in that sector, maybe, but I don't have the figures right now, but I'm sure that we'll see some impactful decline in the consumer goods sector. However, I should say that we're also still seeing some positive, we're also still hopeful and optimistic about the future of the consumer goods sector, at least for the rest of the year, given the positive economic outlook that we are seeing, that we have for the rest of the year.
Thank you so much. Ali, can you weigh in very quickly on South African Airways? This airline can't afford to go down, but the Treasury wants very strict restrictions or what you call oversight about this money, 10.5 billion rand going into it.
So what's interesting is within the South African government, there's obviously a split. We've got Tito, the finance minister, on one side, who was extremely reluctant, frankly, and said as much to bail out South African Airlines. And we had another group who was saying, absolutely in the national interest, ignore what's gone on before, you've got to bail them out. So it's actually quite interesting from when you look at the ANC government that there are two schools of thought. For me, look, the issue is we've had lots of governance issues at South African Airlines. Had those been resolved is obviously one of the first questions before the money goes in. If not, I think it will be, unfortunately, another Groundhog Day. And then bear in mind, Berson, that we're in a very difficult environment for airlines. Yesterday, I saw American Airlines drew down $5.5 billion from the Federal Reserve, from the Treasury. So it is a uniquely hard and tough environment for airlines.
I agree with you.
Can we survive in that environment? It's not clear to me that people can.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even Qatar Airways yesterday took billions of dollars out of the government, and that's one of the most profitable airlines in the world and very visible. I mean, Qatar Airways. So, as you said, it's a very tough period now. It's better to lock the gates before you let the money out of the window. As far as South African Airways is concerned, I'm sure Kenya Airways is also going through a very difficult, rough patch trying to find a solution to that pride of Africa as well. What's your current experience with Kenya Airways, Sally?
So, you know, Kenya Airways, of course, as you correctly mentioned, the government's trying to resolve the matter of the hole in the balance sheet by merging Kenya Airways with Kenya Airports Authority. This has been a long drawn-out process and it's still not concluded. My personal experience was I called Kenya Airways the Pride of Africa on the way to London and on the way back. Look, it was a tip-top experience. I felt very safe, which is, I think, the key thing in order to encourage passengers back onto the aeroplane is how you feel. You know, it's behavioral economics in many ways. You want to feel that you're in a very clean environment. It was, so I've got to highly commend them for that experience. But unfortunately, the plane was 1/3 full. And obviously, the nature of airlines is 1/3 full is just not good enough. I'm afraid, unless you're pricing tickets at, you know, much, much higher. So, you know, they will be hoping for a snapback in tourism and starting to import tourists into the country. And, you know, I was checking with people because in London, they got many, many more cases than we have here in Kenya. And I was sort of saying, guys, you're probably safer off in Africa than you are sitting in the center of London right now. But it doesn't really work like that, does it? People, if they're nervous in their home market, they want to stay at home. So this is the needle. We've got to thread that needle. I don't know how we do it.
I don't know how everybody wants to play the home advantage this time around. I don't know. But I prefer the home advantage for those who love football, like Akintunde, for example. Akintunde Suleiman, what's your take on the market for today? We're wrapping up the month of September, and it looks like investors still have more fire under their belly.
Yeah, we still see investors reacting to the change in NPR. The equity market will continue to support for the medium to short time. This because there are a lot of opportunities for dividend yield. If you look at the dividend yield of a lot of stocks, you see those stocks are what is currently driving the market. So investors are taking comparison between what they can obtain in the fixed income market and what is obtainable in the equities market in terms of dividend yield. And that's certainly for dividend yield for stocks like, you know, Zenith Bank, we see the Guarantee, we see MB, MTN as well driving the market. So for the fixed income end, we're expecting a lot of liquidity into the market going into the week. We'll see maturities for the OMOs and as well the NT bill. And we're expecting an auction from CBN today, tomorrow, and of about 133 billion. And we anticipate that this will be fully subscribed, and that will further depress yields across the market entirely. The bonds market won't be different. We'll continue to see investors trying to cherry pick on those bonds that we can give them solid yield in terms of return for the period.
Okay, thank you. We're all going to take one final story to wrap up the show this morning, and that's Egypt. Today, floating the first ever sovereign green bond. This is one big story. So let me ask all of you to give me a minute each of your thoughts. Nigeria raised the quoting on green bond. This is the way to go. Is that a yes? Chima, let's start with you from Bativa Capital.
Yes, I think that this is a good way to go. Investors are forever looking for new ways to diversify or newer investment options for them to invest in. And a green bond talks about projects that are protective of the environment, and many people are increasingly aware of such activities and are increasingly invested in such. So I think that this will gain a lot of attention. However, given the current economic realities, it remains to see how well investors react to it. But I think that fundamentally it's a good way to go.
Okay, Agnes, you think $500 million is a very small amount of money for Egypt to raise via green bond, by the way? I think so.
Look, I think Egyptians are very innovative. when you're talking about COVID-19, the impact of climate change in our society. So it's very timely, in my view, very timely, and something investors want to be associated with. Anything that has an impact, anything that has an environmental impact, people want to be associated with that. So suddenly, I think it was timely and very creative, and they will not struggle. I could be wrong. They will not struggle to raise this amount.
Ali.
Look, I think it's very clever. I think the key issue in a time of budgetary constraints is that what you say on the ticket is what you do. I think your point, 500 million, this is the lesson a lot of people should learn. Sell less than the demand is and people will come back for more. So I think 500 million is good. They also put a concession against the equivalent Egyptian Eurobond. So that will also, you'll see a tightening. So this is where they are sophisticated market operators. You'll get an oversubscription, that will be the headline tomorrow. You will get a tightening of the spread, that will be the secondary headline, and bang, off you go, and you've created a pipeline opportunity. So kudos to them.
Kudos to them in North Africa, in Egypt. Thank you so much. Akintunde Suleiman.
Yeah, I agree. Green bonds are, they're a variant of bonds and it deepens the market. It's a good initiative for the Egyptian market. And in time of environmental friendliness and increase the increment in consciousness of a cleaner environment, coupled with the fact of the health challenges we are having across the world, I think it's a good time to promote and stand as a proponent of cleaner environment and cleaner society. So I think it's a great initiative.
Okay, there's a thumbs up there to wrap it up for today for the Egyptian authorities doing the $500 million first ever sovereign green bond. Thank you so much, Akintunde Suleiman from Greenwich, Chima Ukadike from Vertiva Capital in charge of consumer goods analysis. Thank you so much, Agnes Gital from GBS Africa. Thank you very much, Anna Frontier Africa, and of course, Ali Kansachu, the CEO and founder of Rich Frontiers Management. Thank you, all of you. Have a great Tuesday. Thank you for being part of the program today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.